everyone, from our team at OCB Natural Edge. We are giving you an edge in pure natty knowledge. And I am joined by my awesome co-hosts, Sean Sully Sullivan, who is on all sides of the bodybuilding judges table, including having been a competitor, and the amazing Aubrey Warwick, who just rocks some bikini heels like nobody's business. So we're all happy to be here today.
I can rock heels too. So.
I learned it from watching you, Sully.
Yes.
That's where I got my shimmy and that little wink over the shoulder.
I don't know. I bet we get some comments on that. You may have more requests than you know.
I think personally, Sully and I should have a pose off.
Ooh, that could be good.
You guys let us know if you want to Sully in heels.
We're doing it at the Jordan Cup. I will come out and no, I won't.
Okay.
I won't. Back on point.
Anyway.
All right. Let's move on. So we're moving into our first section. It's going to be OCB Insider, and I am going to pass things over to none other than Sully because he pretty much wrote the book on it. And we're covering the different categories. Sully, take it away.
All right. This episode, we're going to go into our most popular male category at the time, classic physique. So back to reference, going back when we talked to in our last episode, all physiques are judged on three things: symmetry, the amount of muscle size, and the amount of definition. All those are different in every category. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a breakdown of what we're looking for in symmetry, size, and definition, and what an overall look should be for classic physique, so that there is no question when you're preparing what you should be looking for classic physique. Now, last episode, we also talked about trying to find the category that is right for you. So please pay particular attention, particularly to the symmetry aspects. So if you're preparing for a show and you don't think that you meet the symmetry exactly or the size exactly for what we're looking for classic physique, then gravitate into bodybuilding or men's physique, because you can always jump back into it as you gain more size and experience. So we're going to start with symmetry. What is the symmetry for classic physique? Well, in the OCB, it's balanced and flowing muscularity. Everything needs to be balanced. So you're looking for a smaller waist. That doesn't have to be as small of a waist that you're looking for in men's physique, where you're looking for that really, really tiny waist and wide, two-dimensional looking physique with wide lats. But you do want to have a smaller waist and wide lats possessing a nice V-taper. Full quadricep development, nice diamond calves, no blockiness in the musculature, and everything needs to be flowing with no muscle imbalances. So you're looking for a top to bottom, symmetrical, balanced, flowing physique. No big muscle gaps. Everything just flows together. So that's what we're talking about for symmetry. So if you were to black out a silhouette, it should look something like this. As you can see, narrow waist, wider shoulders, everything flowing together. So that's the symmetry component we're looking for. Now, what about the size? The size is that three-dimensional, full muscle belly, well-rounded, big pecs, big arms, big everything displaying a good degree of size and thickness overall through the physique. So you want to have a good degree of size. The size component, very similar to bodybuilding. You know, the difference comes in the definition and in the symmetry. Where in bodybuilding, you can have some asymmetrical imbalances, and we're going to talk about that in a future episode. In classic physique, you really need to have that flow all the way from the top to the bottom and a good degree of muscle size. Everything matching. Big biceps that match good-sized calves. Bigger thighs that flow into a narrower waistline. High rib cage, big chest. So good amount of size. Now, the last component we're going to talk about is the level of definition. And here's where classic physique differs in OCB than in any other federation. Classic physique in the OCB was based on the look of competitors from the 70s and right up to 60s, 70s, right up to around 1980 time frame. Competitors at that time always trained for a balanced, flowing, symmetrical physique, and they had a good degree of definition. How much definition? Watch Pumping Iron. If you are as defined as, say, Arnold Schwarzenegger or Serge Nubret or Franco Columbu or one of those stars from the 70s, you're on point. If you have a very, very grainy, cross-striated all over your physique, cross-striated glutes, tries, whatever. That was not the look of the classic era of bodybuilding. That look didn't come about until well into the mid to late 90s. So our level of definition is detailed and muscular. Low body fat overall, so all the muscles should be clearly visible. You should be able to see quadriceps from the front. Quad means 4. So when you're standing from the front, we should see all 4 muscles of the thighs, vastus medius, vastus lateralis, the splits. You should be able to see it, but no feathering, no detail, no grainy look. From behind, you should be able to see a thigh bicep. Now remember, thigh biceps are hamstrings. Bicep means 2. So you should probably see lightly 2 of the thigh biceps from the rear. But if you notice modern day bodybuilders, when they flex a hamstring, I mean, it looks like an anatomy chart back there. I've seen some bodybuilders, when they flex that hamstring, it looks like there's 19 muscles back there, and I don't know why they call it a thigh bicep. So that's not the level of definition that you want. From the triceps, you should be able to see the horseshoe clearly. You should be able to see striations through the chest and good abdominal muscles, everything clearly visible, but not that grainy, not that cross-striated look. So overall, you're looking for a wide V taper, full sweeping quads, high chest, cap delts, calf and arm development should correspond, everything balanced, leaning more towards balance and shape over a high degree of striations. But you still need to have a good amount of definition. So look at some of the examples that we flashed here to give you an idea of our ranges of definition, and that is classic physique. Jody, as a judge, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see with classic competitors, physique competitors getting on stage now? What are the number one things that you see?
Absolutely. The term that you said earlier that stands out to me is blocky. We don't want to see these athletes blocky. And I think sometimes they're misentered or misplaced in the wrong category. They should be in bodybuilding. And that's number one. The other, to me, this is my personal opinion, I love to see that balance, just like you said, between the calves and the arms. They should match. And I know that can be so challenging to achieve. And then the third one, I will say, you mentioned full muscle bellies, which is so true. The work to get to show day is so important, but how you show up on show day as well, showing up full enough. So your nutrition, your fluids before are just going to enhance that. And like my fabulous co-host Aubrey says, it's like the non-calorie icing on the cake. If you can master that part of the peak, that's just gravy for you. It is. Those are my top 3.
What about you in your experience, Aubrey? What have you seen that where some competitors are falling short in that classic physique category?
Really, I think from what I have seen is just to kind of reiterate what you guys are saying. It's like the confusion between understanding the symmetry of all this and that balance. But usually I am watching the amateurs in this in this division. So I have not had the opportunity to see a live experience, because it's either like I'm in the show or running around doing something else. So
I'm seeing. Yes.
Yeah.
You're getting your notes.
Yeah, a couple of things I've been noticing is sometimes I see classic physique competitors trying to come in too defined. They're getting a lot of their information on YouTube and some of the other federations where there's really not a big dividing line in condition between classic physique and bodybuilding. It's more a size thing or a shape thing, where there is an upper limit on how defined you should be. Now, one thing that sometimes happens, which, and I guess now's a good time to bring it up because it happens in all the categories, is that you'll see pictures online of who won a show, whether it's bikini, a wellness, or classic physique competitor, and you immediately go, oh my God, they're too ripped for men's classic physique. What you never see is who they were on stage with. And that sometimes occurs because we're always going to look at all 3 dimensions, but you're never going to place somebody ahead of somebody just because they're a little too defined if they don't have the prerequisite amount of muscle size and symmetry. If they don't look like a classic physique competitor, then they're off the table already. Like I said, the first thing we look at is symmetry. And so what the judges are trained to do is to look at the symmetry of the competitors and the 2 or 3 best symmetries they look at, and then they do a deep dive in and assess them for the rest of the category. That's how we train our judges. So you can see somebody who's a little too defined, but you don't see who they competed against. The same thing happens in bikini, where somebody who wins bikini was a little too soft. Well, you don't know what the rest of the category looked like, or they were too hard. Again, same thing. So that sometimes plays against us, but it really is a level of definition. And the last thing I'm going to say about men's classic physique competitors, your mandatory poses are the front double bicep, the side chest, the rear double bicep. You bring around the other side chest, because you want to see both sides for the symmetry, hand over head, abs, and thighs. Here's 2 mistakes that I see before we even get into the final pose, which is a favorite classic pose of your choice and your second favorite classic pose of your choice. Get to 2 classic poses. And that is when you're doing your abdominal shot, you're doing a vacuum. The vacuum is a pose that you can use for the classic physique pose of your choice. For the abdominal pose, you need to crunch down on those abs. We need to see the 6-pack. That's the proper abdominal pose. And the last thing is when we're calling for your favorite classic physique pose, I see this happen a lot with the debuts and the novice competitors. You're doing a mandatory pose again, a front double bicep or a side chest. That is not a classic pose. So we have more guidance on the OCB website under classic physique. We're looking for things like the crucifix pose or the mantis pose. I mean, there's a million poses. You can Google the names and you can get descriptors. And we're going to put more pictures up on the OCB website so you have more of a differentiation. So when the judge is calling for that favorite classic pose, you need to be doing an archer or a 3/4 back double bicep, and not another front double bicep again. You're repeating the same pose, and therefore you're putting your placement at jeopardy because you're not doing the pose we called for. So those are the most common mistakes that I see.
Right. And I would say bonus points for coming prepared for a pose down, because that's very popular too. We love to call out at the end and say, hey, let's do 20, 30 seconds of a pose down. So if you can get yourself prepared for that, I would argue that it's going to make you that much more confident during the mandatories.
Every time I head judge, I call for a classic pose down. And I want to see as many classic poses as they can do. Yeah, the front double bicep and the side chest grip. And I want to see all it. And that's the flavor of it. It is more balanced and symmetrical, slightly less defined than bodybuilding. And you get to do those really, really cool poses, the artsy stuff. And that's what sets it apart in OCB. Now, we said pose down. I think it's time for OCB Pose Down.
All right, so our OCB Pose Down for today, we are featuring 2 shows. The first is the OCB Immortal Muscle. This was a pro and amateur show held on March the 29th in Beaufort, Georgia. Promoters, Jackie and Magnum McRae.
I think that Magnum guy has a little experience in the Yorton Cup, right?
Just a little.
A little, like 4 of them he won? Yeah.
I think we're starting to lose count.
Let's check those highlights out.
right. And the next show that we want to feature is the OCB Magic City Muscle. This was held on March the 29th in Birmingham, Alabama. Show promoter was Jenny Rodriguez.
And for our OCB Spotlight today, we have Teen OCB Pro Aiden Tripp.
All right, I'm here with Aiden Tripp, not just an OCB Pro bodybuilder, but an OCB Pro teen bodybuilder, or at least you were a teen when you competed in the Yorton Cup and got your pro card. Hey, first question, how'd you get into bodybuilding, and when did you get to the first gym, start working out? What's your history?
So I actually, ever since I was in like middle school age, I had known that my dad competed in bodybuilding back in the 1990s. And behind me here on the wooden stand is actually pictures of my dad from those shows that I'd always kind of looked at and thought, oh man, I'd like to look like that when I get older, you know, thinking, oh, when I grow up. And so I ended up always kind of being into fitness in general. Growing up, I would do CrossFit with my parents. And then when I turned 16, I got a job in town near my house and joined the gym there. And pretty much ever since then, I've been pretty consistently training there, like bodybuilding style.
What was your first show?
My first show was the OCB Cape Cod Natural in the fall of 2023.
How'd you do?
I placed second in open, first in debut, and second in teen.
Now, as a teen competitor, how old are you now? Are you still 19 or did you turn 20 yet?
I am 19. Yep.
You're still 19 years old. And you've already competed at the Yorton Cup
That's correct.
with your dad.
Yes. Yep. The first bodybuilding father-son duo there.
Yes, yes, you were. It was quite an entertaining routine. Now, when did you earn your pro card?
I earned my pro card less than a month before the Yorton Cup, September 7th, and the Yorton was September 22nd, I believe. So
Yes.
just a couple weeks before, and I had been aiming for it since April of that year. and pretty much going straight through pretty like monthly shows to go for the pro card, because I knew when my dad got his pro card in July that he would go on to do the Yorton, and I was like fully set on doing it with him. So that was why I kept going until I finally got it.
And when you started competing as a teen 3 years ago, have you noticed from then till now a real increase in the number of teen competitors we're starting to get into the OCB?
I have, and I believe it's partially just because bodybuilding is more popular overall, but also that the OCB is kind of growing in popularity among those young people, that they're seeing it as an option.
Now, as a teenager, um, are you following the same types of routines that, everybody else is following, or have you noticed you can have more volume because you're younger? What's your diet and training looking like now?
So my training is pretty intense with low volume of working sets, I would say, compared to what some people do. When I say, I count my sets of a session, just counting the working sets. So I do generally probably around a half dozen exercises, and 2 sets per exercise, a top set and a back down, except for very small muscles like the delts. I do 3 sets for, because those, aren't going to tax the system recovery wise. But I've actually found that I can't handle a ton of volume as intense as I want to train. When I start to up the volume too much, it just takes away from what I can do long term for my sets.
Is that a common mistake you're seeing amongst teenage trainers that you start working with and talking to, trying to do too much?
I think that especially too many repetitive sets within the session. So a lot of teens are pretty good about, and not just teens, the people, in general, as athletes seem to be pretty good about picking the number of exercises they're doing, but they just do repetitive sets of that exercise. So say 4 sets to failure of squats. And if you're doing that, I've found, at least in my training and my clients' training, that it's really not gaining more benefit. The first set is really by far the most stimulating. So the goal is to do that. And the back down, I generally do a lighter weight and higher rep and work on technique with that a little bit more. And that just lends to the future sessions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I trained much the same way as a teenager. I started at 13, made all the mistakes of trying to train 6 days per week and high volume. And I eventually gravitated, coincidentally enough, to something very similar to you: 1 or 2 working sets, no more than 3 to 5 set exercises per muscle group, and try to make sure I had plenty of off days. How many days off from your training do you take per week?
I take 2 rest days in a 7-day split. So I do push, pull, legs, rest, legs, upper, rest, and then repeat.
With the back, knee, and hip twice per week.
That's correct. Yeah, I do my back, obviously, on pull, and then I do all of my back exercises first on the upper body day to prioritize that.
Hey, so what is your inspiration? Like, what is driving you on to compete? What's your motivator? What's your why?
Well, I definitely, just myself, I enjoy pushing, having something to put my effort into and push myself to be the best at something that I can be. And then also seeing other top natural bodybuilders and kind of seeing just what natural bodybuilding you can do. Like, people kind of tend to set limits on it of, oh, you can only put this much muscle on in a lifetime. And the natural bodybuilders that you see now, like Chris McCready or Keefe West, I think is his name on Instagram. He's incredible looking. Like, I see those people, especially over in England. My coach is from Scotland, Josh Campbell, and they're all just incredible with natural bodybuilding. So I definitely aspire to be like a lot of them.
So if somebody wants to reach out to you, especially somebody in our teen audience, and they're interested in following you, how do we find you? Where do we get you on Instagram?
Yeah, probably Instagram is my biggest social media. thing that I use. It's ripped_trip with 2 P's. And then my father is actually ripped_trip_senior. So we've got the duo usernames there. And then my email is also aiden.teamtrip@gmail.com. So either of those, you can absolutely reach out. And even if you just want to learn more about training or have a question about training that won't necessarily lead to coaching, you can feel free to ask that as well. And I'd be glad to help you out.
Hey, Aiden, I want to thank you for your time. In closing, any closing remarks?
I don't think so. I really appreciate being able to join the episode here and just the honor of competing in the OCB. It's an amazing organization, and I definitely aim to complete some more shows there and hopefully qualify for that Yorton Cup again when I compete, probably in 2027. So I'm looking forward to coming back to the stage.
I'm holding you to it, 2027. Hey, Aiden, thank you. And train hard. I'll see you soon.
Absolutely.
All right. Now it's time for my favorite feature. It is pro tips. Again, today's pro tip came from the field. Another that was put on the OCB official page, Instagram page. So again, anybody who wants any questions answered or have any pro tips, go ahead and hit that up. But today's question is, I am interested in becoming a competitor for the OCB. However, we have no commercial gyms in my area. I do have some home gym equipment. Is it possible to become a successful competitor training at home? What say you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's all about overloading the muscle in very careful and I think should be very calculated ways, just so that you can get there the most efficiently. But if you have the equipment to do that, then you're absolutely set up for success and without the crowding in the gym. I would say you're not going to get there with bands unless you just innately have a ridiculous amount of size. It's 2 and 3 pound weights and some bands are not going to cut it. Nor will boot camp classes or body weight exercises. But for the most part, yes, you need to have some equipment that's going to help you overload those muscles.
So, and I think that you can get really creative with this and where you are in this stage of your life in terms of building a home gym. I know the question was, how much are you looking to invest? I think that's something that, do your research, focus on things that are conducive for, you building a significant amount of muscle mass. And it depends on, the space that you have available. And I would love to hear from both of you guys, like if you could have one piece of equipment, I guess it would have to be a home piece of equipment. You're on a deserted island. Let's throw that in there. What would it be?
I've actually lived this. So my first husband and I started out in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Okay.
But as the homes grew a bit, we started accumulating piece by piece by piece of weight equipment. So we started with a bench, dumbbells, and the first bigger piece of equipment was a Smith machine.
Yeah.
And we eventually had about 13 machines and a full basement to accommodate that, which was we were very blessed, very grateful for that. But that's where we started. And I found that was more than sufficient to build a good foundation.
Okay.
Less than $1,000. And I think I'm being pretty generous there. I think
really? Wow. That's great.
You got some used, if you could get some used equipment,
right.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
One thing I'm going to say is that in my 30 plus years, 34, 35 years of competing in bodybuilding, I trained in a home gym for 30 years of it. That didn't mean I wouldn't occasionally go to a commercial gym just for a little bit of atmosphere if I was traveling, but I predominantly trained at home. And my home gyms, it expanded and contracted and expanded and contracted and expanded and contracted. So here's some of my pro tips. If you're going to invest in a home gym, the first thing you need to do is what is your budget and what is your footprint? You need to have room to move around. So if you're trying to do it out of, let's say, a bedroom, you're going to have to go through a fairly minimalist type of a gym. If you have a garage, you can expand it even more. If you have a whole basement, even more. But again, it has to be based on your budget. My second pro tip is find the equipment that gives you the best bang for your buck. Now, I still have a really, really nice home gym, and I'm going to share some pictures of it here. So as you can see, I have a all-in-one machine that has cable crossovers, power rack, Smith machine, flat machine, all in one. I use that extensively. Next thing that I have that I highly recommend is my set of adjustable dumbbells. Here with a little twist of the handle, you can go from 5 pounds all the way up to 80 pounds. Now they do make them that go up to 120, but at 60 years old, I'm not flinging around much more than 80 pounds now. But again, not very expensive for what I put into. And it's a space saver. And now I have two favorite pieces of equipment that I think give you a lot of bang for your buck. And that's this bench right here. It's called the wide body bench. And the thing that I love about it the most is, as you can see, it has attachments that pop right on the side. So I can do leverage movements with this by putting these lever arms on it. Anything from flat benches to inclines to shoulder presses. It's got another attachment I can do here for cable crossovers or flies. And then this third one here where you can do arm curls on it, or you can flip them around and do various rowing exercises or whatever. And this is what I mean about bang for the buck. For under $1,000, you can get the bench a little bit more with all the attachments, but you can get this bench and this attachments, and then you have that wide variety that you can do. And then the other thing that I really like, and disclaimer here, none of these manufacturers are paying us for anything. I'm just trying to give you an idea, bang for the buck, everything under, well under $2,000 that I have in my gym per piece. And the other one here is Bulletproof Fitness. It's called the Isolator. And it allows you to do leg extensions, seated leg curls, preacher curls, tricep extensions, so many different movements. Now, do you need all of this? No, you don't. You need to decide what you like. But one mistake I see people getting is they buy a bunch of equipment that they think they need because somebody says you got to have a power rack. Well, listen, if you don't like doing load-bearing squats and you prefer doing a leg press or a hack squat or one of the many other exercises that will still develop your legs, but if you get this power rack, you're not really going to use it, don't buy it. In my older age, I like the leverage equipment more than I like doing the free weight movements, only because of a few injuries, and I can still get a good workout in it. 15 years ago, it was all ahead of your power rack. So things change. Your equipment should change. But you want to find something that's in your budget, that fits the footprint that you're looking for, and that you're going to utilize. Don't buy something because the expert says you need to have a leg extension. I didn't do a lot of leg extensions in my day. But don't buy something that you're not going to use. And that pretty much, that's it. You can be a minimalist and succeed. And one thing I always like to say, how minimalist can you be? And this is my last pro tip, as minimalist as you need to be. All right, hey, we're going to wrap it up. And again, in closing, I want to thank you. I mean, we're starting to get a lot of views now. We're starting to gain some popularity. All about you. Let us know what you think. Hey, if you like the show, go ahead and hit the like button. Subscribe to the OCB channel. And with that, I'm going to say, be safe, train hard, stay natural. We'll see you next time.